Welcome, everybody, to the NARPM Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Pete Neubig. And like I say every week, we have another great show. I actually have one of my new friends, Jen Merritt, here. Jen is the CEO or COO of RentScale, where she's worked with hundreds of management entrepreneurs and coached over 100 BDMs to produce industry leading door growth for the last 2 years. She has 16 plus years experience, so she must have started when she was like four, because she doesn't look anywhere near that she might have 16 years experience, 9 years in plus experience in real estate experience, and is a real estate investor herself. She shares a powerful but easy to understand framework and uncommon insights with an approachable style for all levels of experience. So, Jen, welcome to the show. Appreciate you having you here.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Love being here with you. Thank you for having me on today.
All right, so we read your bio, but tell us a little bit about, a little bit about your story, and then just kind of quickly give us a recap on what rent scale is and how they help the property management industry.
Yeah, so I know quite a bio, like a mouthful, right? But really, I've been in sales since I was a little kid, honestly. Girl Scout cookies. No, I'm kidding. I'm not taking anything back. But I worked for a metals company straight out of college and sold stainless, aluminum, and carbon. So I know more about the raw material than most people do, and that's kind of where I cut my teeth. And I just learned, and I worked myself up to a national account manager, and got to work with companies like Boeing and Polaris and Airbus. And eventually, I was approached by the chief commercial officer, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to come work underneath me? We're a $4 billion a year company at this point, and we've acquired a bunch of companies, and everybody's selling in different ways. So why don't you come work with me? And I want to try to put some uniformity behind this." So he and I traveled the US and Canada and Mexico, learning about what all the different salespeople did. I just got to sit and shadow salespeople all day long, which was a lot of fun. And I learned so much just sitting back and watching what was good, what worked, what didn't work, what was not so good. And when I got back, I went to the Association for Talent Development, and I got a license or certificate in adult learning facilitation and design. And I designed two programs for the company that then got rolled out and ran across all of the salespeople. There were 1,800 salespeople. So I've been facilitating sales training for about 12 years now. And eventually just kind of got to the point where I wanted to jump into real estate. Also on the side, I had been flipping houses and demoing houses and remodeling houses. And the house I'm in now, I actually built. So I just wanted to step into that world. And so I did, got my license, and I still hold it in the state of Colorado. But I didn't love being a resale agent or a broker, if you will. And so I was approached by a large property management company, and they were like, "Hey, will you come on and be our BDM?" And I was like, "Yeah, sounds good. I have no idea what else I'm going to do, so I might as well try that." So I was actually in the business development management role in property management for a little bit, and then became director of sales for that company as well. So I learned a lot there about property management and about the space. I did a lot of things right, did a lot of things wrong. And that's when Jeremy found me and approached me. And I've been here at RentScale coaching business development managers how to be better in their role, but also how to enjoy their job as salespeople a little bit more. And that's just my main focus.
So you went from selling basically billion-dollar deals to selling, you know, $200 a month, contracts.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, so tell me, like, what's the main difference on that?
Yeah, so the $1 billion deal is big. Like I sold to, Boeing and Polaris and Airbus and Husqvarna. And the thing about those deals is they're a long-term nurture. Like there is no transactional business that takes place. A lot of the salespeople in that space come on board and don't actually get paid any commission for 2 to 3 years, but then they land this giant multi-million-dollar deal. And so it's just very, very different. There's nothing transactional about it. It's all relational. And if you don't have that like challenger style, I don't know if you're familiar with the challenger sales style, but you don't have that style where you're thinking critically about how to really help people, you're never going to succeed, because for a lot of people, it's about the silliest stuff. It's not the price at the end of the day or even the delivery, but it's like I had that one client who literally said, "You are the cheapest option with the fastest delivery. And I want to go with you, but your freight column is too high. So, metal, you have to truck it in and out, right?" And so I was like, okay, no problem. So I moved my freight column on the spreadsheet over to the raw material column. And he was like, done. Cut me a $4 million PO. So it's just you got to know your the goals of the prospect you're speaking to. And then when you come to property management, I think it translates, but I think it's really easy for people in this space to be super transactional.
Yeah, do you think that even though you're dealing with $4 million deals, people are less emotional about those deals versus their investment or their if they're a reluctant landlord?
Yeah, great question. Yes, it's strange. The dollar amount swing is huge, but the thing about the $4 million deal is that it's not really personal. It's all for a company. It's all driven by a P&L or a line item, and people want to perform well, but they are somewhat emotionally detached from it. And when you come over to this space, people are very emotionally attached to all of the results, even the investors that say they want to be hands off. Something goes wrong with that property and they're going to be emotionally attached because that's their personal dollars. So it is a very, very different sell.
All right, so you've been training or you know training salespeople for a long time, or you've been involved in seeing salespeople get trained and all that stuff. Are you born with it, or can you actually train somebody to be a salesperson?
That's a great question. So I do think that people are inherently born with certain abilities and skills, interpersonal or whatever. However, I would say that anyone can learn to become a good salesperson if they're willing to step outside of their comfort zone. So I think that the answer is kind of both, but you can also train yourself to be a completely different person if that's really what you want. But a lot of people don't do change like that. And a lot of people aren't going to step out of their comfort zone like that. So that's where it's like, well, you were definitely born a certain way, but can I train a salesperson to be great? Can I train someone who is really, unsocial and not as bold and like not the typical salesperson to be those things? Absolutely. I say I actually am one of those people. So it's possible, but man, it's
It
not a
helps
lot
when you
of
have
things
the
like
right
that.
personality profile, or you born innately with some type of personality trait that translates. Yeah.
Yeah, and there is something at the core. But here's the thing: is like born that way. I'd say raised that way even more. I always say anytime I'm looking for a salesperson, I'm not looking for experience, and I don't necessarily care if they've been in the PM world, and I don't care if they've sold real estate or have a background in it. But what I'm not going to change is I'm not going to change their mindset. I'm not going to change their attitude. I don't really have time to train those things. So when you say like, are you born with it or is it learned? I mean, I think essentially it does get learned. But for me, it's all about the mindset when you're hiring a salesperson. And I don't have time to be your mom. So I'm looking for something that is already innately there in salespeople.
Now, if I know you, which I think I'm learning you, but my guess is every time you interact with a salesperson, whether somebody you're training or just somebody like at the clothing store, how quickly can you tell if they're good or not?
Oh, so quick, Pete. One of my favorite things to do is the pest control people that come around in the neighborhood. Even if we're in the middle of dinner, I will stand up, go answer the door, knowing that it's a pest control person, and I'm like, I want to hear this spiel. Like, I'm so excited. Yeah.
And after about 30 seconds, can you tell if they're good or not?
Yeah, you can tell real quick. And I'll tell you what, those pest control guys are really trained well to like do all the salesy things. I really appreciate them for that. And everybody says they hate buying new cars, they hate going out of the car lot, they hate talking to the salespeople. And I'm like, I'm all about it because it determines whether I'm going to buy a car from this person or if I'm going to go buy a car from somebody else. Because I'm all about the salespeople. And yes, you can tell very quickly.
All right, so now I'm going to flip the question. When you are training BDMs, because you guys hire, right? You guys help hire and train BDMs.
Yep.
Whether I say, "Hey Jen, I need rent scale to go find me a BDM," or "Hey Jen, I have a BDM, I need you to make them actually produce," right? So, can you tell pretty quickly if somebody's going to be a good, like if somebody's trainable and they could be a good BDM? And have you had to have that hard conversation with that property manager owner saying, this guy you sent me is a bag of,
Oh, yeah, all the time, Pete. In fact, that's just my daily life. But yeah, when we're interviewing people and I actually get to sit down with them like over Zoom, we do them all virtually because everybody's all over the US. But when I actually sit down with people, I can usually tell within the first 5 minutes. Now, I will say there's been a couple of people who I'm like, absolutely not. And I'll still interview them all the way through because I've had a few that have actually changed my opinion as they've gone on and they've worked out to be really good BDMs. But
hey man,
90%
even
of
even E becomes before I after C every once in a while, right?
every once in a
It's
while, every
always
once in
there.
a
It's
while.
always the exception to the rule. But
Yeah.
generally speaking,
Yeah.
you can pretty much tell, and you've been spot on most of the time.
90% of the time I can tell. And, we get it wrong, but we have a hiring guarantee for that. So, yes, I can't get it right every single time. And sometimes people present really well on an interview and they can just communicate really well and clearly. And they have this confidence and they talk all about real estate and they did a good job preparing for the interview. But then when they step into it, that's just not who their personality, that's not what their personality is. That's not who they are. So, occasionally we do get it wrong, but I would say that more often than not, we get it right. And the process we have today is getting better BDMs in than we ever have. I mean, just this last month, we reported 4 people who signed above 45 doors for the month of July, which is crazy. Like,
That's a
that's
lot. That's a
amazing.
lot considering
Amazing.
it's a lot considering what you're hearing right now, right? People are
Yeah.
not getting leads, they're not getting doors. So that's really a testament to you and your team. All right.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about structure here a little bit.
Mhm.
I want to see where you come on for this structure. So, one, do you believe, like, is your mindset or the rent scales mindset, like the BDM has to be local? Versus remote. And then two, whether that's remote in states or out of states. And then two, where do you come up with on having the BDM have an assistant BDM who might be a high, detailed person to kind of help them wrangle all of these, leads and all that stuff. So kind of break down what your thoughts are and what Rent Scale kind of believes, their belief system.
Yeah, I mean, our primary belief is going to be that I want the person to be in the market and I want them to be boots on the ground. Why? Because I believe that, when I was with the property management company that I worked for as a BDM, I sold into 6 different markets. And I understood the difference between a Birmingham and a Detroit and, all of the different spaces that we were in a Colorado. I signed far more deals here in Colorado where I was physically located because I could say things like, oh, down there on the corner by that new restaurant, like that's the kind of stuff people want to hear for real estate. A lot of the time, they want to know that you're local. I also want them to be able to go out and outbound prospect and network with the space. And it's a lot harder to do if they're not boots on the ground. So, rule of thumb is that I want them in the market. That being said, we have a couple of BDMs who are not in their market and were very successful. One we hired for Peter at one point, and his BDM wasn't in his market, and he did well. He really did well with it. We've got someone we're training right now that is remote, completely like a remote team member, different country, and she's doing really great. But what I would say is you can only have a remote business development manager if you have the leads to support that person. And then you're looking for a different individual. You're actually looking for more of an order taker or like an inside salesperson where they're just kind of taking people in and connecting with them over the phone and sharing a little bit about features and benefits that attach to pains and goals. But if you don't have the leads for that, you really can't have somebody who's not boots on the ground. And then part two to that question is, have you had anybody come and do like an assistant work or help with some of the stuff that a
Continuous
salesperson?
work, the
Yeah.
CRM, database update,
Yeah.
all that stuff that your typical salesperson not very good at,
Yes.
by
So
default.
we're seeing more and more of that come up. And we actually just had somebody reach out yesterday. We'll be actually sending them over to you with a referral that they were looking for someone who could do that kind of stuff. They actually want somebody who can also do some outbound calling and doing like appointment setting. And so we're seeing it be more and more common and come up more often. But up until I would say about a year ago, not many BDMs needed that because the companies weren't growing fast enough. Now we're getting really good traction. Companies are growing faster and there's extra, revenue available to hire someone into that space.
So it kind of goes in line with our thinking. When I owned Empire, we had two salespeople that were local, that were licensed, and then they each had their own assistant. And
Mm-hmm.
that assistant did all the data, like did all the CRM, took all the inbound calls. We decided if they decided if they were a lead or an opportunity, right, or hot or cold, whatever you want to call it. They did all the CMAs, they got all the paperwork. And my salespeople, I guess in your verbiage, they were order takers. They just had meeting to meeting to meeting. But we had so many leads coming in. We had 100 leads a month, 50, I think, were opportunities. So these two people had 25 meetings per month minimum, and so their job was just go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting and follow up, right? And then all the CRM database stuff was done by the assistant, which our assistants were in Mexico at the time.
Yeah, and that works. And I think that it's a great way to keep a salesperson organized because just as well as I do that if they're truly a sales archetype where they're built for sales, they aren't going to do like it's hard to get them to do the CRM well. That's me. I am not a CRM data person. I can be detail oriented if I need to be, but it's not my go-to.
I want to say COO doesn't, you don't get there
I
with
know.
detail.
I
So,
know.
all right.
Well, I'm COO of a sales training company. I always tell people, like, yes, I am way more organized than a lot of people in sales, but also not as much as most COOs probably.
Probably that's fun. All right. So most people that listen to this are probably thinking right now in their head, that's great. But how can I pay them? Like, what's a good comp structure, right? And then what are I'm hoping they're thinking this, but what are the metrics that they should be looking at?
Oh man, yeah, good question. So comp structure for BDM, I've run multiple different ones, but my favorite one it's core value here at rent scale. Simple is always worth it. And there's a lot of comp structures out there that drive different behaviors. And the thing about a salesperson is they're always going to maximize for their income, and they are just absolute geniuses when it comes to working around their comp structure to make them more money. Okay. So you do have to structure this right. And I've seen everything from, hey, you give a percentage of the management fee, a percentage of the leasing fee, and you carry that for 12 months because if you carry it for 12 months, then they're only going to sign the right people on. Because if they sign bad people, then guess what? Their commission goes away because they terminate. So I've seen that, but it's really a
I was
headache
gonna
for
say, does that put a lot of pressure on your accounting team?
yeah, it's a headache for accounting to keep track of that. It's a nightmare. Like think about a BDM if they're signing 30 doors a month and then you have to keep track of that for an entire year. Like that spreadsheet is ridiculous. You have 150 people plus trying to manage like when one starts and stops. So yeah, that's not simple is always worth it. The best structure I've seen that is the easiest to digest is a simple base and I'm seeing in the marketplace somewhere between about 48 and $65,000. There are some California markets right now that are having to go up to almost an 80, 90, and $100,000 base.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy, crazy.
Wow. Base.
Um, base. And then you do what we call an escalating commission on top of that. So the more doors that they sell, the more that they make per door. And we have like an actual spreadsheet structure that you get, and we build it out for your company uniquely because it does look different for everybody. But all in comp, I'm seeing somewhere between about 90 to $120,000, 140 on the high end, all in.
Do you typically work it backwards? Like, okay, what are we trying to get them to? And then
Mhm.
based on this, then this is how many units that they're going to have to close, and then here's the base salary. So that's
Yeah.
probably
And
yeah.
I even try try to work it backwards with the thought of not even what do I want to get them to, but what is your revenue support? What is your P&L support? How much are they going to sell? So we actually sit down and we say, hey, what's your annual customer value or your RPU? And then we can figure that out. And how many doors a month do you really want to bring on? What do you think is reasonable? And so we do work it back from like, can we afford this person before we start to bring them into the business? Because the
Because
last thing I want to do
you
is,
can go cash negative pretty quick.
yeah, the last thing I want to do is bankrupt the business to bring in a business development manager. And then we need to bring in maybe somebody part-time or look at some different options.
Okay. Now, okay, so now let's talk about KPIs or key performance indicators, metrics to see how they're doing. Because this is one of the jobs that I found becomes it's much easier to create a KPI versus like create more for your accounting person
Yeah.
because it's all performance based. So tell me what is it that you guys set up and look at?
Yeah. So we look at a couple of different things. And honestly, like the thing about sales KPIs is that you can have sales KPIs for a million different things and
Correct.
they're coming out our ears, right? But what I would say is obviously we want to look at the number of doors closed. That's important. And it's not necessarily everything that I want to drive with, but it is a definite factor of what I actually want to accomplish. Then I would say that you want to look at conversion ratio. Now, be careful because conversion ratio can be incredibly misleading. There's a lot of factors that go into a conversion ratio. And so you do have to carefully kind of walk that line between what that really means to you. When I talk about a conversion ratio, people put different things into that category and that column. And so I always tell people to be careful. But we do say that's one of the KPIs. And we do say a healthy company should be around 30%. Any more than that, and you're probably like, there's too many opportunities out there that you're not closing them down, and any less than that, and you're not filling your funnel. So conversion ratio is a good one to kind of look at some other stuff. Does that make sense?
It does. Couple of questions on that though.
Mhm.
Because not all leads are created equal.
No.
So do you take that into consideration
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
40%? Because what we did, and I don't know if it was right or wrong, but we identified a lead versus opportunity, and then we had different conversion rates based on lead and opportunity.
Yeah.
We found that the opportunity was over 50%, and that the
Mhm.
leads were like 10.
Mhm. Yeah. So your paid leads, we find close somewhere around 5%. We try to get our community up to 15 to 20% on those paid leads, but they're very low conversions. Whereas like your referrals and word of mouth business, that's going to close at like 90, 80, 90%. So yes, it's incredibly different. And that's also one of the reasons you have to be a little bit careful with conversion, but still, looking at averages is a good thing. So we still want to measure that conversion. And then I would say inbound leads, outbound leads, those are important to measure. We can't expect a certain number at the bottom of the funnel if we don't know what we're putting into the top of the funnel or what has to be put in order to get that. So that's where the conversion rates are important too, is like, how are you funneling people through? Outbound leads, because yeah.
I would say you're teaching these BDMs how to actually create their own leads.
Yeah.
They're just not, just not focusing just on marketing. So they're not the order takers like you say. They're actually going out and killing stuff each month.
Yeah, we are trying really hard to find hunters. Now, I will say some companies don't need a hunter. So the person that we put in the role is really unique to what the company is actually looking for and what opportunity is out there in the marketplace. Some markets have more opportunity for outbound than others. And so that really depends on that's going to pull a different type of salesperson for us. I'd also look at cost per lead. And then I do want to measure retention, or a lot of people in this industry call it churn. Retention is just the positive. I want to measure that. And then percent of growth. That's definitely something that I want to look at to know that my company is growing and that we're continuing to chart up when it comes to new doors signed year over year.
Why do you look at retention? Because that to me is an ops thing. So it's pretty interesting that you're having the sales team look at that. So talk to me a little bit more about that.
So I want to look at that because I want to make sure that the salespeople are signing the right individuals and not just anybody coming in. I'm all about more doors, but if rent scales, literally the booth that we take over to the thing has a giant heart on it and it says more clients you love. because I don't just want to sign clients, I want to sign good clients. So we are paying attention to retention. Also, if you've got 40 doors in for the year, but 60 doors out for the year, well, that's not good.
You've been in my office. You were at Empire. You worked there? I didn't know you worked there.
I've coached a few people. I know how this goes. But yeah, I mean, we want to measure that. And it's not a KPI that the salesperson is necessarily responsible for, but it is a sales related metric that we have to know and we have to measure. The other thing I would say is if your retention is really like, if your retention is low, so your churn is high, you need to put in some sort of like onboarding experience, asset management, long-term sales play where there is more that you're doing after the transaction. After they've signed on the dotted line, you're then acting like an asset manager. And that's a huge push that we're making in our community right now and with our Genesis product, which is you got to have a great onboarding experience so people don't have that buyer's remorse after they sign. And then it doesn't stop after the onboarding. You've got to continue what we call strategic reviews and property outlook reviews. And those are done by the salesperson to turn that one door into three. So that's why I like measuring that
So
retention.
they become like an inside sales rep in a way.
Yeah, I mean, the lead's already there, right? But at the end of the day, lifetime value of a client is important, right? And so lifetime value of a client extends the more that they buy. The idea for any organization is how do you get people in the door, not to buy once, but to buy from you
Multiple
again
times.
and again
Yeah, the one thing about managers that I love is they actually buy every month, right? Which is,
every month. You have a recurring revenue.
but how many times have you had somebody give you one door and then you find out that they have five doors? They were just kind of testing you and they never got around to giving you the other doors, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my goodness, I could have had these other four doors for like 6 months ago. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love that idea. Okay, so couple of things here because I could talk to you all day, but we only have a few more minutes here. But I want to ask a couple of things. Okay, one is, do you have kind of a structure that you created on what is a good lead or a good op versus a good opportunity? Meaning, like the easy answer is like, oh, well, if it's a property that we would not take, that's not a good lead, right? Or if they don't want to, have a property to manage right now, they're just kicking tires. So do you guys go through that individually with each customer, or do you kind of have a framework like, here, this is kind of a one size fits all?
It's not one size fits all because everybody's looking for something different. So, one of the things we do with our clients is if you're receiving one on one coaching from us and we're in the trenches with you, we're going to do an ideal client profile and we're going to look at differentiation. And what you're talking about is really lead scoring, if you will. We
Hmm.
don't necessarily lead score, but what we do is you need to know who your ideal client profile is. And when you see that person, they should be like, we should be attracting them like a dog whistle, but also you should be paying a lot more attention. And so we call that a high payoff activity is finding your ideal client profile, identifying that this person would be a perfect fit in the property management company, and then chasing after that like you can't lose it, like you cannot lose this deal. And if you do it right, you shouldn't lose the deal. And
You
so
know,
that's the lead scoring. I want to like put air quotes around that because it's not like I'm sitting with BDMs going, this one's a 10 and this one's a 2. But I want to be clear about who we want more of in our sphere. And that's very individualized to each property management company.
when we were at the Tony Klein's Onyx retreat
Mm-hmm.
back in July,
Mm-hmm.
when you presented, you crushed the ICP. You were pushing it so much and just telling these people, like you were like so passionate about it. So obviously this is like super important. If you're listening to this right here, just if you can get your ICP down, really drilled in, this listen will be worth it right then and there.
Well, and I think every property manager that I coach starts out with, well, I want, people who are just gonna, listen to what I say and they're gonna be hands off and they trust what I'm doing, that kind of stuff. And it's like, and I want to serve everybody. That I hear that so often. Like, I don't care, I'll serve anybody. And I'm like, well, what's your radius? Like, what's your geographical radius that you're, and like, oh, well, I kind of like this city, but like if it's over here, I'll do it. And if it's over there, I'll do it. And it, if you really talk to people who have had property management companies for a really long time, it's one of the biggest mistakes that's made early on to gain traction in their business is to just take anybody and everybody. But most of them end up having to fire those people. So setting up with the right person first is really important.
Yeah, I actually lived this, right? When I started Empire, I'm like, I'll just take anybody. Then it's
Mhm.
like, well, I'll take obviously anybody who has property in Houston. Then it's like, oh, anybody who has a property in Houston in this area. Oh, no, we don't take multifamily anymore. We don't take anything over 4 units, right? Now it's like, oh, now you have to rent for this amount. So we got it down. It took me, unfortunately, it took me a lot longer than I had hoped, but we ended up getting it down really good. And by having
Good.
the ICP and having this down, it actually helped on the back end because now the next thing I want to ask you is the sales versus ops. I mean,
Yeah.
it is like sales versus
In
ops.
a PM company, this is what it is for sure.
It's just like, so how do you reduce the stress between sales and ops? Because right, operational people, and I'm an operational guy, right? They think these sales because they're always happy, they're high eyes, that everything's fun. They come in, they're never in the office. They come in, they come to the office only to pick up their check, all the way dancing around. Meanwhile, they dumped all this crap on us, all this work that the property manager had to do, the property management agreements redlined, right? They took somebody that's like not in our standards, right? That's like kind of like the perception, right?
Yeah, 100%. Everything you said is so true. And Pete, this is exactly why rent scale exists because in property management, everyone on the team is operations focused. Even the owner is operations focused, set up the systems. Like that's just who the industry attracts, right? Is the operators. And then your PMs and your maintenance people, like everybody, operations. You are the sole person at your company with a completely different attitude and mentality trying to grow the company. And sure, the owner wants to grow the company, but not like a salesperson wants to grow the company. And so, what I found being in the world is that you're on an island as a salesperson.
Mhm.
It's hard. It's really hard. You're on an island. And this is why rent scale exists because we have a giant community of people who are on islands in their company. And we provide a community of like minded people and a network for you to think a little bit differently and an outlet, if you will. But
You're
what
like
I would
you're like you're
say,
like NARPM inside of NARPM, right? Because like when I became a property management company, I needed that outlet, and I found my tribe in NARPM. But now you have these BDMs that are part of NARPM that like I need to find my tribe, and so you have the rent scale tribe in
yeah,
NARPM. Very cool.
yeah, but you like it is a battle 100%. So, what I would say is the best thing you can do to close that off a little bit is to really make sure that you've trained your team and they've shadowed each other. So, the salespeople need to shadow the ops people, the ops people need to sit with the salespeople because
A day in
as
the
soon as you
life.
realize that it's just humans trying to do their job and everybody's doing their best to execute the tasks of their role, it stops that ops sales battle. And we don't have that here at Rent Scale, but I guess we're all salespeople at heart.
Right.
But at property management companies, man, it is alive and well. So this is all about the training you give your team. These are all about the onboarding handoffs. These are all about signing the right clients. These are about operations, understanding what sales is trying to do and the goals of the company. And I think this goes back to really a leadership thing. Is everybody rowing in the same direction? So do you have if you follow traction, do you have the VTO in place? Do you have your core values? Is everybody on that boat paddling forward or paddling backward together? And if they all understand what those goals are, they understand the importance of each role in order to achieve those goals.
All right, so last one here I'm going to talk about. By the way, well said. And if you can reduce that stress, and if you do have that stress in your business, obviously call Jen and the team at Rentscale. All right, so Rentscale. So I'm going to be a little personal here. Rentscale is actually putting some training on VPM, the VPM Academy, on how
Mhm.
to sell the different personality styles.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit like what do you think is the main personality style that most salespeople run into? And just give me high level of one thing because we're kind of limited on time here. One thing of each different personality style. What's one thing to sell to them?
Yeah, so I always think of it's four categories, the way we categorize it, and it's said different words everywhere, but it's a driver, an expressive, an analytical, and an amiable. So what you see most often in this industry is probably either a driver or an analytical.
That's
And
kind of
what you
what I
have
thought. Yep,
to,
that's what I thought.
yeah, what you have to understand is that a driver's basic need is to be in control. So in sales, you have to let that person have a little bit of control. And analytical's basic need is to be right. So you have to provide data, facts, and figures to that person and then give them time to make a decision. So in understanding the profiles and their basic needs, you understand how you can better sell to them because everybody needs a different level of patience. Your driver is going to move like that. So if you're not following up and if you're not all over that person, you're never going to close them. Your analytical needs time to digest all this information. So you got to know those things. And yes, I'm very excited for the personality profile training.
And you got to let the analytical win.
You got to let the analytical win because they need to be the experts. That's their
Their
why
thing.
they do the data.
That's their thing. Well,
Mm-hmm.
Jen, we're running out of time here, so I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be here. If somebody is interested in in getting trained or learning more about rent scale, how do they get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, so you can get in touch with me, just Jennifer@rentscale.com, or even go to our website. We are launching a brand new Scale Club community that's going to be more open and available to just general public who want to join for a very reasonable price that's launching in September. So it's brand new. Normally, what it used to be to get into our community, you had to go through the system, you had to go through the coaching, you had to go through the training, and then you pay a premium every single month for one-on-one coaching. But now we've created a bigger, broader community. And if you just want to hear what's going on and be part of the conversation and remove yourself from that island, this is a great low cost kind of entryway to step into it. So Jennifer@rentscale.com. And I'm happy to walk you through, even if you decide this is something you want to DIY.
Thanks, Jen. And if you listen to this and you're not a NARPM member, shame on you. NARPM.org or give them a call at 800-782-3452. And for your next assistant BDM that you're going to hire as a remote team member, give us a call at VPM Solutions or give us a try. You can email me, pete@vpmsolutions.com, or just go to our website, vpmsolutions.com. Jen, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Pete. I appreciate it.